Sonia Pavlovich, Christine Lieber, Stephanie McLean, Allison Maldonado, and Leah Bernardo Sidio. Without these people, I probably would still be muted or trying to figure out how to organize and promote this event. So with that done, welcome to all of you. Thank you for joining us today for Changing Lives with PLAR, Fanshawe's pilot with early childhood education and educational support. I am Daphne Bonner, the Director of Programs and Engagement here at ONCAT, coming to you today from our ONCAT offices, very close to the shore of Lake Ontario and on the land of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. So many of you know what I'm about to say, but I'm going to say it anyway. ONCAT has 3 pillars. One of those pillars is creating and maintaining systems that facilitate learner mobility and transfer, and that includes ontransfer.ca and some other cool automated program and course comparison tools. So stay tuned for more on that in the coming months. Another one of our pillars is conducting and funding research that supports and advances healthy transfer and mobility policy and practice. And then finally, funding projects at institutions that build institutional and sector capacity to make learner mobility seamless and easy. And we on the programs and engagement team are part of this 3rd pillar. In the 25-26 years, we would like to focus our engagements with you, our sector partners, on 2 things. One is sharing the success of ONCAT funded projects that create, implement, or improve aspects of learner mobility, and also on collaborating, on replicating and implementing those successes at other institutions. So that is what brings us here today. We are very excited to share one such success story, Fanshawe's bulk PLAR pilot with early childhood education and educational support. And here to tell us about the project are Christine Spicer, Manager of Quality Partnerships at Fanshawe College, and Kristen Young, the Project Coordinator on the bulk PLAR pilot, also from Fanshawe. Christine, over to you.
Thank you, Daphne, for the warm welcome, and thank you all for attending today. Kristen and I are so excited to share with you how an idea became a reality and how this idea sparked passion and opportunity. Next slide, please. Across Ontario, we acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of many Indigenous peoples, each with distinct cultures, languages, and histories. Those rich cultures, languages, and histories have shaped this land for generations and have contributed to our personal learning journey, which in turn is connected to our sense of place. Early childhood educators are committed to creating learning environments that honor Indigenous ways of knowing, being, and teaching. They create spaces where respect, empathy, and truth are foundational to every child's growth. They foster an environment where all children, families, and communities feel valued and understood. And they reflect on the importance of teaching young children about the histories, cultures, and contributions of the Indigenous peoples in age-appropriate and meaningful ways, which foster a sense of belonging, justice, and respect from the earliest years. They walk alongside children and families as they collectively nurture a future rooted in reconciliation and mutual respect. Next slide, please. So to start off, I thought I'd give you a little bit about summary about our project, and then we'll go into some of the details of the actual project and some of the impact that the project made in terms of the participants that we saw participate in the project and those connections to enrollment and some of our labor market initiatives here at Fanshawe College. So this project really focused on our program-based assessment and allowed candidates to seek recognition for their vocational skills within the early childhood education and educational support fields. They could challenge up to 75% of their program using PLAR. When I reflect back on this project, I think of 3 key words, and these 3 key words will be evident to you throughout this presentation. I think about experience, opportunity, and impact. Experience relates to the recognition of significant years of industry experience. Opportunity relates to access to post-secondary education and new careers. and the impact relates to personal and professional growth. Next slide, please. So like every project or initiative, there's always a problem to solve. So the problem that we were trying to solve is we were really trying to increase the visibility of PLAR and acknowledge the benefits of it, while eliminating barriers to post-secondary education and really reducing the lengthy process of course-by-course assessment for multiple courses. Because when you have an applicant who is wanting to PLAR multiple courses, it can be very cumbersome and overwhelming. And lastly, we were really trying to provide an opportunity for employment mobility within the field, which is a win-win approach for both the employee and the employer, resulting in a positive outcome for the workforce. Next slide, please. So where did this idea come from? So this idea came from a lot of minds kind of coming together and collaborating. And really what we did is we looked at some good news stories surrounding local industry. People who collaborated with the college to fast track experienced but under-credentialed employees to diploma completion. And that's kind of where we started with the idea and went from there. So for this project, we knew we needed to do a lot of groundwork before we actually could implement some of the assessment tools and recruit participants. So for this project, we knew we needed to think outside of the box of the traditional course-by-course PLAR. And we needed to create a pilot approach that we could build on from lessons learned. As you all know, when you start with a project, there's always things that you want to tweak along the way. And that's exactly what we're doing with this project. Although we've created the pilot and we've successfully implemented the pilot, there's still some tweaks that we're making so that we can make sure that we can implement this across other programs at Fanshawe College. We also really wanted to create a streamlined approach to attract mature learners with extensive skills and little to no post-secondary education. We were looking at offering solutions to workers who were struggling with employment stability due to the lack of post-secondary credentials and their limited access to education, which in turn provides industries with an opportunity to upskill workers and a stronger labor force. This idea really came to fruition based on the alignment with Fanshawe's strategic initiatives, specifically related to strategic enrollment management, strong graduates, quality programming, meeting labor market needs. Of course, we had excellent support from Fanshawe's academic leadership and ONCAT support through the funding of this project. Next slide, please. So with every project, there's always things that you like and dislike about projects. And when you put a project plan together, research is always key to ensure that you have alignment with the project outcomes that you're looking for. So we did a lot of research at the front end of this project to make sure that we were really targeting the populations, the programs, the industries, and the communities that needed it the most. So when I think about the research, it really provided a clear framework for next steps of the project. In terms of labor market demand, we looked at projects or programs with strong labor market trends and a shortage of skilled workers. Environmental scans allowed us to review initiatives that focused on responding to new social and economic challenges. And CICAN's PLAR framework is a prime example of some of the research that we kind of leaned on when we were thinking about how this project would come to fruition. And priority programming. This again was key. We selected programs that were deemed essential and contributed to a skilled workforce and strong graduate outcomes. Next slide, please. So again, we have a problem. We're looking at the idea. Now the solution. The solution was to create a bulk PLAR project. So the research phase and the strong community engagement, both internally at Fanshawe and externally with some of our community and industry partners, really supported a strong decision to pilot the initiative with the early childhood education program through our Huron-Bruce regional site at Clinton, and through the Woodstock campus with the educational support program. So the approach. So really, this project was really focused on kind of two buckets. I've split it out into the engagement approach and the assessment approach. So the engagement approach really focused on the people of the project. And as you know, with many things, the people are the core of kind of what makes things go around. And I would say that although the documentation and the, excuse me, the documents that we produced are key, the people and the passion for this project is really what brought it to fruition. So in terms of looking at kind of the people of the project and what it included, we looked at a lot and did a lot of consultation with faculty and subject matter experts. We did an extensive marketing, communication, and knowledge mobilization plan. Internal and external stakeholder engagement was key. So internal support from our Fanshawe colleagues and our faculty and our student support services, and then external industry support in terms of the labor market demand and the recruitment, and kind of embracing the idea that we were going to help them upskill some of their workforce. Participant recruitment was also very important, and included in that was some great community events that we went to in person. We did some virtual meetings and virtual kind of marketing, targeted marketing, word of mouth, social media, and connecting with the interested participants. Student wraparound supports was also very critical. As you know, non-direct students navigating post-secondary processes can be time-consuming and overwhelming. So we really tried to set these students up for success with the tools and the right people to support them along the way. The next approach, or I guess the next bucket, is the assessment approach, and it really focused on the documents of the project. Although I said the people was kind of the best part for me, that I don't want to take away from the great work and the great documents that we provided and kind of tweaked and are in a good spot with in terms of the assessments. So through this, we maintained quality through program standards, residency requirements, course outlines, college policies, best practices of PLAR, faculty experience, and industry expertise. So in the next few slides, Kristen's going to speak to the assessment process, the model, and the tools, which are, again, related to a lot of the documents of the project. And once she has enlightened you with some of that information, I will focus it back to the more of the people in terms of the participants and the impact that this project has had on our community, both internally and externally. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Christine. Thank you, everybody, for attending today again and allowing me the opportunity to speak to a few points about how we actually created this assessment and how it's a little bit different than what we have been doing from course-based PLAR. So we had determined through our research that course-based PLAR was very well established at Fanshawe College. The typical model would be for students to come and challenge course by course anything that they felt they had sufficient background in, which works really well if you're wanting to challenge, say, a field placement or a practicum course or one-off theoretical courses. But we were finding that anybody that brought a substantial breadth of experience, this was very cumbersome to do from a program-based perspective, because you would be looking at literally challenging every course. If you've got 25 courses within a program, that could be overwhelming for everybody involved, from the applicant to the assessor to the kind of the support staff within the college. So we wanted to see, is there a way to make it easier for students to challenge an entire program of study? So what we came up with was, instead of us evaluating each course learning or course with their learning outcomes separately, we wanted to see if we could challenge the vocational learning outcomes. So to understand this, it's important to know the difference. Obviously, a program of study, for example, ECE, Early Childhood Education, has about 9 vocational learning outcomes. If you look at each course within that program, each course would have, say, 10 to 12 learning outcomes. So a vocational learning outcome is defined by Fanshawe College as representing the vocationally specific knowledge, skills, attitudes, and experiences that a student must be able to reliably demonstrate by the end of a program. Okay, so there's about 9 different vocational learning outcomes for the ECE program. A course learning outcome reflects the intended knowledge, skills, and/or attitudes that are taught and evaluated within a course. So clearly very specific to that course, but every course learning outcome does map to a vocational learning outcome. So we wanted to see if we could create an assessment process that targeted each course and course learning outcome, but wasn't an actual assessment of that course. So we created a map that showed exactly how each course learning outcome mapped to each vocational learning outcome. We plotted those vocational learning outcomes in a chart. From there, we determined what the method of assessment would be. We wanted, and we'll discuss this more a little bit later, but we did want a very broad assessment of an applicant in different ways. We used faculty subject experts to determine what the content of the assessment would be. And when we plotted the courses and the VLOs to clearly and transparently show if we are assessing a student in this method with this outcome, this is how it would plot to the vocational learning outcome, and it would show exactly what the student had demonstrated they had met from a VLO and a CLO perspective. And then we developed assessment rubrics that showed the student and anybody that was interested exactly how we determined that the student had demonstrated knowledge. So that was the kind of the process that we went through, and I'll describe a little bit more in detail on the next slide, please. So with the idea of the triangulation of assessment best practice in mind, we wanted to ensure that we had at least 3 elements of assessment. It leads to a well-rounded approach of assessment and a clear demonstration of skills showing background over a variety of assessment methods. So the 3 that we determined, and we did this with the faculty members, the faculty member subject matter expert. So we did not determine this within our small group. We actually worked really closely with our faculty member. So we determined for both of the programs that we have chosen, ECE and EDS, that we were going to use a challenge exam, an interview, and a portfolio. The transparency and the ability to document the applicant's knowledge and skill in a wide variety of assessment methods allowed us to show that they truly met vocational learning outcomes from a number of different backgrounds. Okay, next slide, please. So it was very, very important to us that the assessment model was going to be efficient and flexible and transparent. Transparency was absolutely key for us. We want anybody, as I said, that wanted to look at the students or the applicant's assessment, that they would clearly see how we had determined what learning outcomes had been met. It showed the applicant the opportunity to demonstrate the skills of a variety of course learning outcomes that then fed into the vocational learning outcomes that we wanted to ensure the student had met. We then also, from that assessment, we created a detailed report that showed the applicant exactly how they scored on each item of assessment, and it provided a confirmation of which learning outcomes, course by course and from a VLO perspective, the student had met. This process also allowed our advising center, which is our student-facing center within this process. It allowed them the opportunity to see the results of the courses and the associated grades that the student had met through the assessment process. So this was really important for us. We had a very, very detailed report to both the student and our internal and external stakeholders to show exactly how the student had met their learning outcomes. So we use these learning outcomes to assess PLAR by working very collaboratively with our faculty-based subject matter experts. They're experts in both academic and vocational competencies, and were instrumental in mapping out the course learning outcomes to vocational skills and tying back to vocational learning outcomes. Without that Without that knowledge, we could not have continued with the project. And we created a standardized matrix and evaluation tool that ideally we would like to then be able to unveil to other programs within the college or anybody else that really is looking for a way to harness a streamlined approach to bulk PLAR assessment. And by using the evaluation process that we developed, we could assign a letter grade for each course, which we felt was critical. We did not give pass fails for any of our assessments. We wanted a student transcript to look identical as a student who sat in the class because they needed to show within the A to C range where their skills were, not just a pass or did you meet the criteria or not. We did want to have student transcripts looking the same as a student who had sat in the class. Can I have the next slide, please? So we also had a self-assessment at the beginning of the process. So the student had to begin the process by assessing their own level of knowledge and meeting with our faculty subject matter expert to determine that they met the learning outcomes in their background. It promoted informed decision making and allowed the applicant to focus on their strengths and weaknesses, and there was then opportunity for the student to say, actually, maybe I don't meet the learning outcomes. A lot of students do have a bit of bias, so they sometimes think they have more breadth of knowledge than they actually have. They may be very, very focused on one area, but they have to show that they had the breadth of knowledge across the entire learning outcomes. I'm going to take a moment and pause and let some people ask some questions.
Yes, there is a question. Dawn, I'm not entirely sure we're going to be able to hear you if you ask it, so I'm going to go ahead and read it out. Dawn is asking if students could improve their mark by iterating the assessment.
Christine, I'm going to put questions over to you at this point.
So the assessment mark, the mark that was provided for the assessment was the mark that was given. Question, are you asking about the self-assessment or the other assessment methods that we're going to be speaking about later? So the self-assessment is basically allowing the applicant or the participant the opportunity to see if they would demonstrated the level of knowledge and the skills and the experience required. So that was the first kind of portion of the assessment piece. Following that, they then met with the faculty, who was clearly a subject matter expert in the field, and they would determine if the participant met the requirements to complete the PLAR assessments going forward. And that for this particular project was the significant years of experience within the industry. There's
a lot of questions coming in, Christine.
I see.
So would you like them now?
Sure.
So, well, and Dawn's question was about the summative assessment. Christina is asking if there were any limitations on courses for ECE flagged as an issue for PLAR. If you can unmute yourself, Christina, maybe you want to explain your question. I'm not entirely sure. She does say, I have learned of some industry restrictions from the College of ECE.
Hello.
Oh, hello. We can hear you.
Hi. Yes. Okay. Wonderful. So basically, I just wanted to see if there were any sort of challenges or any obstacles throughout this process with the project. Just because through my work with PLAR, we've always run into some sort of issues with our subject matter experts regarding regulations from the College of ECE and whether courses are deemed eligible for PLAR or not. And I was just curious if anybody else has also noticed these kind of restrictions. Thank you.
We did have one entire vocational skill that we wanted the students to learn within the confines of the classroom. So we did identify if there was anything that we could not offer PLAR for, we did identify that to the student beforehand. And anything that was going to be problematic, that there was a an understanding that the student had to take that subject matter within the classroom. So we did take that into account.
Okay,
And
thank you.
Just to follow up on that, that information was communicated to the student prior to them kind of after the self-assessment, before they got into the thick of all of the PLAR assessments. That was communicated and laid out transparently for them.
That's great. Don has also added a bit more to it. Basically, he's asking, could they turn their C into an A by providing more evidence?
So
when you're signing a letter grade.
So a C that you have already, so if they received completed a PLAR assessment and then they wanted to increase it, we didn't come across that. To be honest, the PLARs are completely appealable. So I think that it would have to be including senior leadership within the academic area to determine if something had been not demonstrated clearly enough.
Right.
I think that would be up to the academic area to determine. But because PLAR is appealable, I think you would have to likely at least have that discussion with academic leadership to see if there is an opportunity to increase. But yes, our project didn't have that issue come up, but that would add to the cost. Yes, I would imagine.
Right.
For it to be reassessed.
So 2 more questions that I think you can probably answer pretty quickly. One is from Tricia Bonner, who graded the assessments. Were they compensated? Were the 3 assessment methods then averaged for the final transcript grade? That's all from Tricia.
Yeah. So the faculty member that created the assessment also graded and interviewed the students. So it was the assessor who graded the assessment. And for the purpose of our project, yes, that faculty member was compensated for her time. And the final it was an average. Yes, there was in the rubric that we can share out. There was a way to average out how many A's, B's, C's a student got for the different types of assessment to then create an average to give a grade for the applicant. And that was developed by the faculty member again.
Thank you. And Jackie Crawford is asking, maybe Jackie, you want to ask your question because it's about outcomes.
Yeah, sure. You can hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so the question is, at first I thought you were looking at assessing only like 9 vocational learning outcomes for the program, perhaps?
We have 9 vocational learning outcomes, yeah.
Okay, so are you also assessing course learning outcomes as well? Because I was thinking maybe there's like 10 courses times
so
9 learning outcomes.
Yeah, so we have mapped out all the learning outcomes and how they map into the vocational learning outcomes, and then each assessment method and question was also mapped to both of those. So we could clearly see, even though you weren't having to show that you had met all 9 learning outcomes, for example, for each course, by averaging out, we could clearly show that the learning outcomes had been met by the course, from a course level and from a vocational learning outcome level.
Okay, maybe we can talk more about that at the end. Let's move on.
Mapping is key. Absolutely.
Yeah, the mapping is key.
More time mapping than anything else.
Yeah. Colleges love to map.
Okay.
New slide, Kristen?
Yeah, I think we go to the next slide. Okay, so the first type of assessment method we landed on was a portfolio. It seems to be the most common PLAR assessment method used by probably everybody in this room right now. The benefits was very learner-centered. It really was the best way for the student to begin the process because they were, by creating their portfolio, they were really understanding their own knowledge and how to create a portfolio that showed their their breadth of experience, but it also really helped them prepare for the exam and the interview that they were going to do throughout the assessment. It was a very detailed document of acquired skills. There were clear, very, very specific instructions on how to create the portfolio and what to include in it to be successful. And it allowed for direct documentation, so the students or the applicants' feedback on themselves, but also indirect documentation from third parties for things like assessment of their own working experience, work with colleagues, feedback from employers, any kind of training that they had done, could be a documentation from a third party. The challenge of it was very time consuming. It was by far the most time consuming to evaluate and for the applicant to create. Next slide, please. We also used the challenge exam. Challenge exams are great because they did allow us to use pre-written exam questions that were being used within the classroom to test the applicant's knowledge. It was very easy for us to administer. It was actually quite accessible to the students. We did make it a remote assessment for everybody, but applicants could certainly come into the college if they wanted that one-on-one support. But we have a lot of students in rural areas that we were utilizing, and so for them it was easier to hop on a challenge exam, and it was proctored, so the academic integrity was at the top of mind. And it was also, if there were any accessibility needs or accommodations a student needed or an applicant needed, we had a full team behind us to support. The benefits also was it was self-marked, so it didn't take my faculty member 4 days to mark a portfolio. So by the end of the exam, the applicant knew exactly how they had fared on the challenge exam. The drawback was it was a little bit intimidating. Some of our students had not been in post-secondary education for many years or ever. So for those students, it would certainly be a bit nerve-wracking, maybe a little bit of pressure. And if students had not been in the post-secondary for a long time, the idea even of an online exam is something very new to them. So again, we did certainly utilize our staff if we needed that extra one-on-one support. An applicant could certainly come in and get that. Next slide, please. The final method was the interview process, which allowed applicants to answer pre-planned questions that'll assess their knowledge and the applicant's ability to apply the knowledge they had into real-world situations. It was very authentic and student-focused and very good for students with good oral skills. Again, a challenge could be a little bit nerve-wracking and very much an on-demand situation where a student has to perform almost. Luckily, because of the nature of our society, a lot of interviews are something that people have a familiarity with already. So it was very similar to an interview for in the workplace. But it did allow the student that real opportunity to apply their knowledge to real world situations that the faculty member would address. Next slide, please. And finally, we had a rubric, as I said, that clearly. Andy, that's a great question. I don't have the answer to that. So Andy asked which of the 3 assessment methods the students preferred. I'm going to go back to Christine for that feedback. Yeah, I'm going to ask that of Christine.
I'm not sure that I have the answer to that question.
Andy, I'm always asking us questions that are hard.
We didn't ask. However, we are still seeking some feedback from them about the PLAR process. So that's something that we definitely can follow up on.
And I can answer some more. I know there were some more questions while we're paused. I can't see them anymore, though.
Sure, if you want, Kristen, I can read them to you. So Trisha's asking if there were formal questions for the interview or if it was less formal and more conversational.
No, it was pretty
Michelle
formal.
Cole is asking if they could choose the route.
Okay, the students could not. The applicants had to utilize our methods, but the faculty members chose. They determined what they felt were the 3 best methods to assess their content. And I saw another question that's again gone, and
were there formal questions for the interview, or was it more conversational?
No, it was formal.
It was formal.
There was still one more question though, I think.
Okay, and I see that we're going to hear about the participants in a minute.
Yeah. Was there anything else? I feel like there was one more question I haven't answered.
I don't think I missed anything. Oh, there's one for later. There is one.
Okay.
So Dawn had asked, and it is a bit of a bigger question, was there specific training for PLAR assessors? And
Yes.
Dawn, by PLAR assessors, do you mean the faculty who were doing the assessments?
Yes. Yes. So in other words, for leveling consistency and things like that in terms of evaluation.
Yes. Yeah, we had some really great background documentation from Red Deer College, who visited our college a few years ago. We made that available to the faculty members, and we also utilized faculty who had assessed PLAR previously. So PLAR was not something that was new to them. I know what the question was how many applicants were assessed? We had 5. We had 5 applicants assessed. And so we had a fairly short timeline of a few months to get the project up and running. So I think that if I would love to see moving forward, if this did become something that was more utilized, that part of the process would be a formal training of the assessors, especially if they don't have PLAR background, because it's really crucial that assessment piece and the transparency of it is top of mind from the beginning of the planning to the delivery to the student of their results. Okay, are we good? Okay, so a little bit more about the rubrics. So as I said, we have a rubric that shows exactly how the students met the learning outcomes, what the grades were that the students received. It was very transparent. It was visually appealing, very easy to see how things mapped out. And it was the same documentation was used for the faculty, for the staff, for the student, and for our advising center. And they all were happy with the clarity that it provided. Sometimes PLAR can be a bit of a gray area, and it was very, very important for us to have that transparency with the rubric and the evaluation. Next slide, I think. Okay, so moving on, that was kind of the wrap up of what the assessment looks like. If there's any other questions, I can certainly take them, or I can pass the floor back to Christine to talk about the participants, because I think we're running out of time because I talk too much.
Okay, thanks, Kristen. So we're going to focus a little bit on the participants, the impact, some of the lessons learned, and what the future looks like here at Fanshawe and across the board for this project. So the next few slides that I'm going to talk about are going to really focus on those 3 words that I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation: experience, opportunity, and impact. Each participant really had their own story. And they were each kind of working towards their own journey, which is really important to remember. So our bulk PLAR project, our pilot allowed 5 participants to complete the assessment process, and their bulk PLAR fees were covered through the project fund. So we had 3 students through the early childhood education program and 2 students through educational support. I'm going to focus a little bit on the ECE program first. So we had 9 applicants in total. 3 were selected to participate. Their selection was based on their self-assessment, their level of experience, and kind of a screening process that we went through with our faculty and our subject matter expertise. We connected with these applicants and participants through community outreach. They all had varying levels of prior experiences, but they were all working in the field. They all were successful in completing all 3 assessments, so the exam, the interview, and the portfolio, and received significant credit towards their courses to the ECE program. I'm happy to report that all 3 are currently registered part-time, pursuing their diploma at the Clinton site through our Huron Regional Bruce campus. In terms of educational support, we had 2 applicants and 2 participants for this, and this was through our Woodstock Oxford County campus. Our approach was a little bit different. We connected with the program team and we didn't select. The program team selected 2 current part-time students who were currently working in the field of educational support and who were currently pursuing their part-time studies through that campus. They both had relatively consistent prior work experience, and they were successful with completing all 3 assessments, and both did receive credit towards their diploma. And they are currently both working towards their part-time credential at the Woodstock campus. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to focus on the impact, and this is another one of my favorite parts. I'm a people person, so we knew the project work was worth it when we saw the passion and we heard the emotion, particularly from some of the participants in this project. I've provided some quotes in red. Those quotes kind of speak for themselves. Some of them are from our students, some of them are from our community partners. But I'm going to share a story with you that kind of pulled at my heartstrings when I was facilitating or setting somebody up to facilitate their challenge exam. I remember connecting virtually with a participant to set her up for her challenge exam. And before I started the instructions, she broke down in tears, saying that she never thought that college was an option for her. She had a home daycare for years and thought that she was stuck in that kind of work forever. Regardless of the outcome of the assessment, she said to me that she was truly thankful for the opportunity that somebody believed in her. That interaction for me proved that the impact of this project was far more powerful than the project deliverables that we had committed to ONCAT to delivering. I'm sorry. I'm happy to say that she is currently registered as part-time and pursuing the ECE diploma through the Clinton site. So I just wanted to share that with you because when I logged in, I didn't know what I was logging into. I thought I was setting up this individual to access her exam through FOL, and I logged into somebody who was bawling her eyes out. So again, that impact and providing the opportunities and eliminating the barriers are some of the great successes of this project. So just quickly, how does completing a credential provide career mobility? So when we look at our ECE students that participated in this project, we had one who was in a home daycare setting. So completing a credential will allow her to work into a licensed facility or to work into a school board, providing career mobility and a change in pace, both professionally and personally. We had 2 other ECE participants who were working in administrative positions in an early years center or a daycare center. Although they weren't working as an ECE, they were in a supervisory position. They used this opportunity as more of a professional development opportunity so that they could really align what they are seeing and promoting every day so that they can relate to staff, children, and family. And when I look at the EDS, so our educational support participants, they were both currently working as temporary educational assistants while attending school. This credential, when they receive their diploma, will allow them for a permanent position within the school board or another organization. So again, lots of great career mobility, not only just professionally, but also personally as well. Next slide, please. So lessons learned. The great thing about a pilot is you can tweak things as you go and you can make things better. So that's exactly what we are doing with this pilot project. A few key items that I will touch on is what we did learn through this project is you really need to provide adequate time for faculty to create the assessments. It's time consuming and it's more fulsome than the course by course assessments as Kristen has outlined. For example, we had about our faculty we gave them about 20 to 30 hours to create the assessment process, the rubric, and the evaluation. Now, this will decrease now that we kind of have some standardized templates going forward. Again, knowing that programs vary, the VLOs and the course outlines vary, but we have a standardized approach that we can now share with others. Applicants will be unaware of the amount of time required to complete the assessment pieces, and they will need to be well informed of expectations and timelines. Although completing the assessments will vary from student to student, our recommendation is that this is about a 3 to 4 month process from the initial conversation to the end where the courses go on the student record. And this is a lesson learned. We didn't have that amount of time during our pilot, but this is a lesson learned that we quickly realized. So we gave 2 hours for the interview for the students to complete, 2 hours for the challenge exam, and about a 1 to 2-ish month time frame for the portfolio. The portfolio is the most time-consuming piece. So again, to set these students up for success, just allowing them the opportunity to really reflect on the expectations and the timing that is required to complete this is key. We also created a lot of process documentation. So we created an institutional framework, which really outlined the back end of the process of how a student applies, the completion of assessments, how those grades are entered into our student system. And then we created a student journey map. And this kind of was for the students so that they could see every touch point that they had along the way. So creating or completing the self-assessment, reflecting on that self-assessment, meeting with a subject matter expert, going through the registration process, getting FOL access, and all of the other supports that were required. Again, with some students having not been to post-secondary education previously, we thought it was important that we mapped out this process for them. And the last lessons learned was reducing the barriers. It's really important to remember that experience is worth something. And especially at a time like this, we really need to continue to think outside of the box and provide unique opportunities for access to post-secondary education. Next slide, please. So the future is always exciting. The future of this project is still unfolding. We are tweaking based on some of our lessons learned, and we're working on student testimonials that will be shared publicly through our website and other modes of communication. We are going to continue to offer the bulk PLAR through the 2 programs that we piloted. And although we just piloted the ECE program at our Clinton site, we will be engaging with the other campuses and program offerings across Fanshawe to see if they are willing and wanting to standardize that process for their programs as well. I will let you know that we have had a few individuals reach out who are currently working in the ECE field who are excited for this opportunity and wanting to pursue the bulk PLAR. And the great part of it is they are working for community organizations that are willing to cover their bulk PLAR fee so that they can upskill and contribute to a more meaningful work environment and labor force. We will continue to align with strategic initiatives related to strategic enrollment management and labor market demands. Again, this has a direct impact to enrollment and to graduates who meet employer needs. And we are going to be providing kind of a roadshow approach to our academic areas that showcases the standardized assessments and the tools and outlines the best practices and awareness of bulk PLAR because many areas are not aware of this. And finally, we are going to incorporate our bulk PLAR information as part of our new PLAR toolkit, which is our next exciting ONCAT funded opportunity. So stay tuned for that. Next slide, please. So this quote that I have up on the screen, problems can become opportunities when the right people come together, really sums up our project nicely. The excellent work and collaboration of many provided opportunities for those who never thought it was possible. So like I said throughout this presentation, the people and the passion and the community, both the internal Fanshawe community and the external community that we had, industry, subject matter experts and faculty really came together to provide people with opportunities to better themselves and both professionally and personally, and allowed us to have the opportunity to create some really great documents that we can use going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Christine and Kristen, for sharing this. There are a lot of wonderful comments and questions, and we have about 7 minutes. So I think we have about 7 questions. So that gives you about a minute per question. There are questions about whether there's any grant funding available for the $750 PLAR charge. And I also, in advance of this, had been thinking about, ways as a sector we could find ways to, I don't know, centralize operations or, so that those PLAR fees can go down or be eliminated altogether. So there's a question about grant funding available. There's questions about if students successfully PLAR'd the full bulk, the 75%, did you find the remaining course load a barrier? Did it drop them to part-time so then they couldn't then access, funding or, OSAP, for example, or was it mapped to keep them full-time for the remaining courses?
So all of the participants that we had in this project were part-time students. So they were all taking their credential part-time because they were still working as well. So we didn't face that barrier. But that is something that would definitely need to be thought of.
Yes, absolutely. I hadn't actually thought about that. Yeah. So that's a great question, Sydney.
And can I just jump in with one more comment on that? There have been significant advances made with OSAP to allow OSAP to fund part-time students. So it used to be that full-time students could not ever get any OSAP funding. That's not always the case anymore, but it is definitely a case-by-case basis. But anything like that is certainly discussed with the applicant well before they begin the process of even being evaluated.
Dawn is asking if you can provide a link to the assessment documentation at Red Deer College. And I do also want to mention that I believe ONCAT funded a Fanshawe PLAR guide a few years ago that must also have been instrumental in helping people at Fanshawe understand PLAR. Andy is asking if this process and associated resources or tools be accessible to all colleges in Ontario. And that's something I think we would love to talk about at some point.
Yes, once we have our documents finalized in terms of some of our lessons learned, then we can absolutely talk about sharing some of those resources.
Michelle asked if there were multiple opportunities for these applicants to show their experience with the BLOs and the CLOs through the 3 assessments, and how did you show that in the rubric? And Michelle, if you want to turn on your mic and ask that yourself, you might be able to explain what you mean by the question. That's if Michelle is still here.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, so essentially my question is, I know that you mapped all of the experiences back from all the way back to CLOs and then eventually gave them a grade for each of their courses. So I was wondering, like, maybe it's too complicated a question to answer right now, but in terms of like how that would look like in the rubric, was there say like in the interview where you only assessing a certain number of things, but you wouldn't also assess them in the challenge exam?
You want me to take that one, Christine?
Sure.
Yeah, we have, as part of the rubric, we didn't use the each method of assessment to assess each question, but we made sure that throughout the 3 different types of assessments, all the outcomes had been linked back to the questions. So a student, you certainly could have certain instances where a student was assessed 3 times for one learning outcome. Not always. The mapping does show that. Once we get to a point of being able to kind of share that information, it might be a bit clearer to understand. This, I don't know if I've answered your question fully there. I don't know, we've got tons of time but we can certainly dive into that kind of in a sidebar.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
There are 2 minutes left if anybody has a burning question or if I've actually missed anything in the chat here. I am curious to know if this is, yeah,
Christina,
Bonnie.
I think, has a question.
Yep,
Oh,
we've
sorry.
got Bonnie and Christina. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. My question has to do with the transferability of the bulk PLAR. So if I was successful, paid my $750, got my bulk PLAR 75% credits, could I move to another college in Ontario? And if I moved myself, or for whatever reason, could I have that bulk PLAR recognized, since we're talking about ONCAT, recognized in the Ontario system out in another college?
Christina, I'm going to leave that one up to you.
Okay. So the bulk PLAR assessments would have been completed as, I'm going to say, as a Fantrust student, and those grades would be put on your course record as a Fantrust student. So then that could be those grades you could transfer over depending on what program or courses you would take at another institution.
Thank you. That's wonderful.
Christina.
There we go. I think my microphone is on now. Okay.
Yes.
Great, thank you. Just before I jump to my question, I just wanted to say that everything here has been amazing, and thank you all so much for this. So my question is, just how many assessments were these students able to do? And my question is mostly linked to, was there a limit of how many courses they were able to apply to? Just because I know that at least I'm sure this is across the board with any other institution, we want to make sure that the students are able to meet their requirements to graduate with taking a certain amount of courses housed. So I was just curious to see if that was something that was a part of the bulk PLAR process.
Yes. So first of all, the applicants for the programs of the project had to meet the program eligibility requirements. So that was number one. Number two is they had to complete all 3 assessments. So the interview, the challenge exam, and the portfolio successfully. And number 3 was they had to still maintain the program residency for the program. So we couldn't give them more than 75% of their courses, because we did need to maintain that.
Thank you.
So we are over time, which is, and Adrian had a question about, I'm laughing because that's my own boss and I should have seen the question, regarding faculty time in SWIFT. And I'm just flying through this chat here to see where Adrian's question is.
I see it here. So regarding the faculty time in SWIFT she was just asking if there's time. So for this particular project, we engaged non-full-time faculty, and we were able to provide them with a contract to complete a contract outside of their teaching to complete the development of the assessment, the consultation with the student, and the evaluation. However, my colleague Lisa Wells is on this call, and Lisa was very instrumental in this project through the Woodstock campus, and she does have a little bit of expertise and background in terms of potential faculty time in SWIFT. So Lisa, if you're still here and you'd like to provide some input on that, that would be great.
Sure, I'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Yes, we use non-full-time faculty, but they were faculty who taught in the program extensively. So they had they had taught many of the courses. So in particular, they worked as a team, and that also covered some of earlier questions about how the assessments were always evaluated the same way, as that they worked as a team when they evaluated both candidates, and they really worked with our program coordinator to make sure that they were on the right track in terms of the assessments and all of that. So that's where we came with our part-time faculty.
Thank you, Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa. And I just want to thank Kristen and Christine for this really informative presentation and for charging ahead in the sector, leading this work. And I really hope that we can all work together to find ways to adapt and implement at other institutions and have more of an impact. Because I'm sure that in local communities across this province, there are applicants such as the ones that you provided opportunities for who could use these opportunities. So I'm going to close off here by saying thank you, and thank you to everybody who came. I see that our attendance has dropped off already, of course, because people have gone, but thank you to those of you who are still here. Thank you so much for joining us today, and stay tuned for more Connect and Learns from ONCAT. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.